As you look back at some of the great memories from Vancouver's hockey history, today Canucks TV is proud to talk about arguably one of the greatest hockey teams to ever step onto the ice in the city of Vancouver. We are live at Rogers Arena, home of the Vancouver Canucks, who Saturday night, when the Detroit Red Wings come to town, will pay tribute to the Vancouver Millionaires, Stanley Cup champions of 1915. Hello, I'm your host, Joey Kenworth. Thanks for being with us for this special Canucks TV presentation honoring a century of hockey here in Vancouver and as well throughout British Columbia. With me today, two very special guests to turn back the clock and talk about the Vancouver Millionaires, both on and off the ice. We're here with Craig H. Bowlesby, who is an author of a book known as Empire of Ice, The Rise and Fall of the Pacific Coast Hockey Association. And also with us today is Jason Beck. He's the curator of the BC Sports Hall of Fame and Museum. Fellas, thanks for being with us. I know it's an exciting time for hockey fans here in Vancouver with the Canucks these days, but we're going to talk a little bit more about Vancouver's first professional hockey team back in the early 1900s. Before we do that, though, we want to give you the opportunity to win some fantastic prizes for being a part of our viewing audience today. A great prize up for grabs is an authentic Vancouver Millionaires jersey. Yes, the same jersey that the Canucks players will wear at Rogers Arena Saturday against the Red Wings. We have one of them. They are limited edition, limited as well in numbers. But you'll have an opportunity later on in the program to pick up the jersey with its official certificate of authenticity. We'll also give away some books that Craig has brought with us, his copies of Empire of Ice. So stay tuned to our live broadcast over the next handful of minutes for your opportunity to take home some fantastic prizing. Well, we're here live at Rogers Arena, home of the Vancouver Canucks, a building that's a far cry, Craig, from the building that the Vancouver Millionaires played in. And of course, we'll talk more about that organization and how they were founded. But when it came to hockey arenas and hockey in general back in the early 1900s in Vancouver, how big was the sport and where was it being played?
Well, the sport was being played around British Columbia, but as for Vancouver, they would have 2 weeks maybe during the year when they could play hockey or skate, and they would just get out to Trout Lake as fast as they could whenever that happened, or Burnaby Lake, and they would play all day or skate all day or all night. Special train would take them out there on tracks going right through the bush, and so they really they loved to play, and they really wanted that opportunity. So when the Vancouver Arena was here, built by the Patricks, it was a great event for the city.
We'll talk about that in a few moments, Jason, but when it came to playing the sport, and obviously they're playing it in cold, frigid temperatures on open lakes, the equipment that the players would use is a far cry from what we're used to seeing players in the National Hockey League use today.
Yeah, it was far different from today, very rudimentary. The materials are often horsehair, fabrics, very heavy, especially when they got wet. You can imagine if playing a long game, the amount that these players would sweat. I mean, the weight they were carrying, it's incredible. It was far different than today.
Craig, how was the game being played at that time? We know the game today is neutral zones, goal lines, goal creases, penalty boxes. What was it like, though, before the game really changed around 1911, 1912?
Well, it was quite a different game. The players played all the time, all 60 minutes, most of the time. They very rarely had subs. They were always tired, but they were always moving. So they'd attack in a great kind of flotilla with the puck zipping back and forth between them in a very strange way. We haven't even seen film of that.
Combination plays.
Yeah, scientific combination plays, and they would, and a few people would sort of dash out as if they'd been shot out from a cannon and try to get out to the opposite side. But generally speaking, they would come out like this. It was changed immensely when the Patrick brothers introduced the forward pass.
Well, you mentioned the Patrick brothers, Lester and Frank. Let's find out more about really the first real hockey family of British Columbia and Canada, for that matter, who helped change the game that we know today.
A century ago, and a game forged in the Victorian era was about to be revolutionized. The West Coast would be the welcome recipient. Oh, the times, they were a-changin'.
In those days, the idea of the showman and the idea of creating new things was something, it was like a force that was sort of gripping a lot of people in the nation.
Enter the Patricks, a family that combined a passion for hockey, a flair for entertainment, and an entrepreneurial spirit. Our sport would never be the same.
The Patricks were unhappy with what was going on in the world of hockey in Ontario and in Quebec. And the Patricks decided that they would go west and set up a hockey empire in the west.
The boys, having been hockey-minded since they were children, decided to put hockey on the map in Victoria, New Westminster, and Vancouver.
One of the things that really galvanized both of those brothers was that when they were playing in Nelson, they were constantly thwarted by some of the referees who were playing for the other teams. And they really hated that, and they wanted to have things their own way. So they started with building an arena in Nelson. That started actually the whole thing, building their own arena there, and they controlled that. And then when they sold their logging business, they had the money, just enough money, to start their own professional league, and they went with it.
The Patricks were great entrepreneurs, innovators, inventors.
And the very origin of the modern game of hockey could only be accomplished with the unwavering support and trust of a father who sold the family's lucrative lumber business in order for his two sons, Frank and Lester, to pursue their dream of a hockey dynasty on the West Coast.
Old Joseph, the father of them all.
We know he loved his sons, I'll tell you that.
And what a challenge. They had to go out and build the arena, first of all, the largest of its kind. The first artificial ice rink certainly west of Montreal.
They built an arena here in the summer of 1911 that seated 10,500 people, which was the largest arena of its size in Canada at that time and for many years after. They installed an artificial ice plant, which was the first in Canada, in Victoria, and Vancouver.
He basically put up all his money for what his sons wanted to do. It was a pretty amazing event. We know now that he put a lot of money into the other arenas too. Nobody really knew who financed the Seattle arena, but it turns out it was pretty much Joe Patrick. He might have got money from other sources, but he was the main money man. So Vancouver, Victoria, Seattle, and Spokane, he was basically the money man who put all that together, but he stayed in the shadows.
They built it, but would they come? The Patricks' next challenge would be to attract the greatest players in the world, established stars plying their trade 3,000 miles away.
And picked up 25 of the best top-flight players playing around Montreal, Ottawa, Quebec, and Toronto at that time, and transferred them to Vancouver.
And then tell the Ontario and Quebec people, we're going to win the Stanley Cup. Well, Doughty was out of his tree at that particular time.
So a little bit of a history of the Patrick family and how important they were to building hockey here, not only in British Columbia, but throughout Canada, and turn it into the game we know today. In case you're just joining us, I'm your host, Joey Kenward. We're celebrating a century of hockey here in Vancouver as the current Canucks franchise will honor the Vancouver Millionaires at Saturday's home game against the Detroit Red Wings. Craig H. Bowlesby, a writer, and as well Jason Beck, a curator from the BC Sports Hall of Fame and Museum, join us. And looking at that segment on the Patrick family, Craig, this was a total team effort, wasn't it, to build hockey in British Columbia, not just on the ice, but off the ice as well. They put in a lot of time, and at that time, a lot of money as well.
Oh yeah, they put their entire fortune, give or take, into the two arenas, the one in Vancouver and one in Victoria. They wanted to make a third one, but they just ran out of money. So yeah, it was absolutely a total effort.
And we saw some great pictures there that I know are displayed in your museum, Jason, of the arena. And a lot of hockey fans in and around Vancouver and British Columbia, for that matter, know it as the Denman Arena. But we were just chatting off the air. It's actually wrong to refer to it as the Denman Arena, isn't it?
Yeah, Craig's done some amazing research, and he was just telling us it was known as the Arena, or the Vancouver Arena, and I guess it was actually on Georgia Street, as you were saying, Craig. So.
Well, on Georgia Street, and you know, I mean, right where Denman sort of comes down and joins it, but nobody ever called it the Denman Arena at that time. Like, as you said, either the Arena or the Georgia Arena.
Was it difficult to fill? Was it a case where, and to pardon the phrase from Field of Dreams, but if you build it, they will come? Was it a popular spot for sports fans to get attracted to right away?
Absolutely. They didn't fill the arena. They didn't, you know, have 10,000 people there for their first events. Even for their first few years, they didn't get 10,000 people, but they eventually did. And you know, when you consider how many people that would have meant, I mean, the population of the city was only about 100,000. So right. If you're getting 10,000 people there out of 100,000, 10% of the population, that's incredible.
The one story I heard is that the first couple of years, the Patricks were making a little extra money on the side by actually selling ice from the ice making plant to the city, and most people didn't have refrigerators then.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Now, the Patricks were obviously important figures off the ice to build hockey in Vancouver and around British Columbia, but when it came to the on-ice product, how valuable were they to the franchise in building the Millionaires organization?
Well, without them, they never would have had the professional league that they had. I mean, it's really, it's an amazing sort of confluence of factors that came together. The two Patrick brothers, who were already actually well known back east before they came to the West, so they knew all the best players. They had just enough money to do it. They had, you know, an immense desire. You put all those things together, and they brought, well, in a way, just like you said, if they build it, they will come, and they did come because it was them. Yeah.
All right, we touched on the rule changes and how the game had been played. You mentioned the fact that there was no forward passing. So can you imagine playing a hockey game where you could only backhand it up and down the ice? Not a pretty image compared to what we're seeing these days. What were some of the other rules that were implemented when the Patricks formed a new league and wanting to make the game better and more enjoyable to watch?
There was at least a dozen, just allowing goalkeepers to fall to their knees to make a save. The blue line, player numbers. I mean, the selling of programs. Programs were actually first created so that the numbering of players could be identified by the fans. I mean, they had all sorts of different ideas. I mean,
well, that's true. And one of the first things that they implemented was that you could actually sub a person in, or you know, they could go out and then they could come back in again, because they used to be not allowed to sub anybody in. If you were injured on the ice,
like soccer.
and then you're out and you're gone. But they only had like 7 or 8 guys. So everybody had to keep playing regardless, you know.
And the playoffs. I mean, that's maybe the most important
playoffs, yeah.
Change that they made.
So we're talking about before line changes or changing on the fly, as we would refer to it these days, that the players were on the ice start to finish.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much.
As you said in your book, it was a matter of pride. If you got hurt, I mean, you didn't want to come off. You played through it.
Which means they were probably pretty tough.
Well, very tough. I mean, not that they're not tough today. I mean, the players are very tough today. It's just that they were expected to all, you know, pretend to be superhuman, or I don't know. I mean, they played with crushing injuries. I wouldn't have done that, but that's what they did.
Vancouver hockey fans have been buzzing the past 24 hours about their captain's penalty shot heroics, although it was just a little icing on the top in their win over the Nashville Predators, with Henrik Sedin scoring on a penalty shot. The penalty shot was a very interesting rule at that time that had never probably even been thought of when it came to playing the game.
Well, to playing the game, I mean, when hockey first started, no, the penalty shot was certainly not contemplated. Did you want to mention something about that? Or?
I was just going to say, was it used back east before in the West here, just for a year or two?
Yeah, people don't realize that it was actually used back east first, but only experimentally, and then the Patricks implemented it as a regular thing. So you could say they invented it.
Yeah, they definitely popularized it.
Well, and they definitely changed the way the game was played at that particular era. And they also brought in some big-name players to help the Vancouver Millionaires organization have the success it had, culminating in a Stanley Cup championship in 1915. And one of the biggest names was a player that had a very interesting nickname. A man, last name Taylor, nicknamed Cyclone. If you don't know about him or have never heard of him, check this out.
The Patrick brothers had built new state-of-the-art arenas, started their own league, and revolutionized the rules of hockey. Now they needed elite players to showcase the birth of the modern game of hockey. And who better than the greatest player in the game, Fred Taylor, with the greatest nickname in all of sport, Cyclone.
It's the Governor General's wife that named him that. He had a few other names, the Thunderbolt and things like that. But she says she was at the game this night and she saw the speed that he could create, and she said, "Gee, that's a cyclone out there," and it caught on, and it's been there ever since.
That's my understanding, that it was the Governor General's wife that saw him skating and likened him to a cyclone. So from that day forward, it stuck with him, and he was very proud of it. He loved that name, and as it did the whole family.
Still striding strong at 80, Cyclone Taylor enjoyed nothing more than going for a twirl around the ice. Witnessed this skate with his granddaughter. And it was his skating that was the foundation of his greatness.
Oh, he was a skater. He told John and myself when we were youngsters that the skating is the game. And he says, get that skating going and just barrel in on those guys and do it that way.
He was an amazing skater, and I think that was the strength of my hockey as well as also my brother. So I think to focus on that, he was a real believer in that, and he always said to work on that. And my nickname when I played hockey was Cyclone, so it kind of lives on, and it's a very cool nickname.
A look back at the legend that is Fred Cyclone Taylor here at Rogers Arena, site of the Vancouver Canucks home game Saturday against the Detroit Red Wings, when the home team will pay tribute to the Vancouver Millionaires. I'm your host, Joey Kenner. Joining us again, in case you're just joining us, is Craig H. Bowlesby, a local sports writer who is one of the premier men that knows about hockey in these parts from the early turn of the century, and as well Jason Beck, curator from the BC Sports Hall of Fame and Museum. Well, we were talking about Cyclone Taylor, and Jason, you've got an interesting artifact that you've brought along with us here today, and it's a trophy that a Cyclone had in his hands, and I know it was being brought in here with white gloves. Yeah. Tell us a little bit about this artifact.
It's the one artifact that that Cyclone donated to the BC Sports Hall of Fame, and it wasn't until recently that we really, truly figured out the significance of it, partly because of the research Craig did. This was the MVP award that was given to Cyclone before the term existed. It predates the Hart Trophy by 8 years, if I'm not mistaken.
7 years, I think.
7 years, yeah. Frank Foyston from Seattle won it the year before, and it was only awarded twice. What's interesting is the phrase. Trying to look at it here, champion all-around hockey player. I mean, like I said, predates the most valuable player term.
And Fred Cyclone Taylor was a great definition of an all-around hockey player, wasn't he, Craig?
Oh, absolutely. He was the consummate player. He could do everything. You know, he was. I was just thinking about this. He was actually rather small and slight, but he had a really hard shot. So he could actually do everything. I mean, he could skitter through, a team, and he could. Get back with his backhand. Are we?
Yep.
Okay. He could go through a team forward or backward, and he was just.
I mean, one of the famous stories, of course, is the game where he went on goal on a breakaway and purposely skated backwards and scored. Of course, that wasn't Vancouver. But.
Well, you talk about that, and that is quite a legendary story about what Cyclone Taylor was able to do against a team or so we're told, by not skating forwards, but instead going the other direction. And it is quite a story in case you've never heard of it.
He was a legend long before he donned the uniform of the Vancouver Millionaires. Did Cyclone Taylor actually skate backwards through an entire team and score a goal? That it could even be possible to imagine such a feat can be traced to a time when Syke was still in his teens.
When he was a teenager, he saw an event with Norval Bapti, who was the top figure skater in North America and showman. And in fact, Bapti challenged anyone in the audience to try to beat him going forwards, while Bapti would skate backwards around the rink. And Taylor was pushed onto the ice by his friends. And he was only a teenager, but he was very fast. And he took up the challenge, and he could not beat Bapti. Bapti went around and around backwards, and Taylor was so impressed by this, he determined that from then on he was going to be able to skate as well backwards as Bapti, and that's what sort of started that whole backwards thing.
Well, I know we've heard that since we've been knee-high to a grasshopper, but whether it ever did happen, I don't know. I've never heard my father comment on it, but a lot of people have commented it to him and to us. But it was taken, I think it was taken in jest. The Ottawa reporter came down to visit the Renfrew team, and he came in, called into them after a practice one morning, and the players were all sitting around the dressing room. They were going to play in Ottawa the next night. There was a tremendous amount of excitement for the game. And the Ottawa reporter wanted to just get the feeling of what the Renfrew players were thinking. So my father said, look, we'll beat Ottawa 10-0. And he said, as a matter of fact, he said, I'll even score a goal going backwards. Well, that set it up. It was headlines in the Ottawa paper the next morning.
With respect to the goal that was allegedly scored while skating backward, sometimes you have to separate fact from fiction. And while the bet was made in an offhand manner in Renfrew, and while it packed the rink, whether it ever happened as he predicted, we don't know.
And it was the largest crowd they ever put into that Days Arena, I think it was. Largest crowd they ever put in there for that game. So it created a lot of excitement.
In traveling around the country with my father, people would say, Syke, I saw that goal scored in Winnipeg. And others in would say it was in Montreal. Others in Portage-la-Prairie. Others in Seattle. You know, there would be a stadium large enough, even a baseball stadium large enough to hold them all, if they all, if it was all true that they all saw that goal go in while skating backwards.
If anyone was capable of doing it, it was him. He started out as a teenager developing the ability to skate backwards, and he certainly developed the ability to stick handle backwards, which most 90% of the other players could not do, which is one reason why he could keep the puck away from everyone.
I did ask my grandfather that question, and he just looked me in the eye and he said, you know, there are people out there that swear that they saw that goal happen, and it was quite a feat, and he said, let's just leave it at that.
So quite a legendary story on one of the greatest hockey legends to ever play in these parts. We're currently in the home of the Vancouver Canucks, celebrating a century of hockey. Fellas, there was a question that's come in from one of our viewers on YouTube today, and we're used to seeing the Vancouver Canucks play in blue or green or white, or they've played in yellow or black in the past, but we're going all the way back to the Vancouver Millionaires, and we've got this beautiful maroon jersey in front of us. Why did they wear maroon? Why did they choose maroon?
Oh boy, that's one question I can't quite answer. I'm afraid it was very colorful, and back then they certainly chose their uniforms to be as colorful as they could. There were probably not a lot of teams that were wearing maroon at the time. Red, blue, white, green. So maybe they did it just to be different.
Well, they wore this jersey when they went into the Stanley Cup in 1915, and it was quite a time for hockey fans in these parts, wasn't it, when the Stanley Cup was having a chance to be presented to a team on the West Coast?
I mean, it was the first time a BC team had won the Cup. Still the only Vancouver team yet to win the Cup, although Victoria did win in 1925 as well. Thousands came out. It really, reading from Craig's book and other research, it really sounds like the city, really took to the game, and it was exciting.
The Ottawa Senators thought they had the Cup in the bag, didn't they?
Well, they did when they arrived here. They soon found out that that was not going to be, probably not going to be the case. I mean, as soon as they started playing the Millionaires, they knew something was wrong in terms of their plans.
What was the playoff format like for a Stanley Cup? Was it a one-game winner-take-all? Was it a playoff series, changing venues?
Usually they alternated between East and West. That year was in Vancouver in the West. 5-game series, although that changed over the years. And Vancouver won that one. They swept it 3-0.
Yeah. Best 3 out of 5.
That's 3 out of 5.
Yeah.
And I take it that Cyclone Taylor probably had a pretty big part in that success.
Absolutely. He was like the spark plug for the team, yeah. I think he scored 7 goals in the 3 games.
He was the leading scorer, that's for sure.
And 3 assists, so 10 points, yeah.
No, we've talked a lot about the Patricks, we've talked a lot about Cyclone, but there was a lot of other players on this team that probably don't get the credit they deserve when you look at the success that team had, especially when they won the Cup over Ottawa.
Well, there's 7 players, including Frank Patrick, who were in the Hall of Fame on that team. And the team only consisted of 10 players, and one guy wasn't even playing. So of that group, that shows you that there was a great accumulation of talent there. So a lot of guys did get some good kudos after that. I mean, Frank Nybor, he won as you mentioned, he won the Hart Trophy the first time it was ever awarded.
Mickey McKay.
Mickey McKay, oh, what a fantastic player. And he was a rookie that year. They had 3 rookies on that team who did fabulously. So it was a great combination, actually, of experience and talent and youth, and it all just fitted together perfectly.
Well, they were all lucky enough to wear the Vancouver Millionaires jersey, the same jersey the Vancouver Canucks will wear at Rogers Arena Saturday night when the Detroit Red Wings come to town, and we want to give you an opportunity to wear that same jersey. There you see it here, the Vancouver Millionaires jersey with its certificate of authenticity. For watching our program, you've got a chance to take home this jersey, but you do have to answer a skill testing question. We have been talking about it, but in case you missed it, here's the question. What team did the Millionaires defeat to win the 1915 Stanley Cup? And you can place your answer simply in the comments section below the viewing screen that you're watching right now on the Canucks YouTube channel. Somebody working hard behind the scenes for the Vancouver Canucks will get in touch with you if you have the right answer. We'll also be giving away some books to lucky viewers today from the book that Craig was nice enough to write and provide us with such great history over the past few years. The legacy of this hockey team, it goes without saying, it's one of the best of all time, and it's obviously been honored in the BC Sports Hall of Fame. For people that haven't been there and are looking to see what artifacts might be on hand, Jason, when they walk through the doors, what might they be able to look at?
Well, we have a pair of Lester Patrick's skates, Frank's brother, that he wore while playing in Nelson. There are other items from the later Vancouver Lions, who came after the Millionaires in the Vancouver Commercial League. And then everything from when the Canucks joined the PCHL in 1945 right up to the present. So.
What kind of reaction does it get from young hockey fans or even old hockey fans when they get a chance to see these artifacts in person?
Most are amazed that people could actually wear, like for instance Lester's skates. Most are just amazed that someone could wear skates like that and play hockey. They're literally just thin leather and blades. It's quite remarkable when you put side by side new and old.
When you were writing Empire on Ice, and I know you devoted a lot of time to getting that book together, did it even cease to amaze you what you were finding out about the hockey of this generation in British Columbia?
No, I was constantly amazed, as you say. I mean, just sitting in a dark sort of dungeon doing the research, I'd come across facts that nobody had known before, and I'd sort of try to tell people, but there's nobody there to tell, so they have to wait, another couple of years before it gets into the book. But it was constantly amazing me, yeah.
Finally, guys, and a question that both of you feel free to answer. As sports fans and as hockey aficionados and sports historians, how nice is it to see the Vancouver Canucks of today paying tribute and honoring the Vancouver Millionaires from the turn of the century?
It's great. I'm just I'm having a wonderful time. Just the fact that it's all happening is sort of something come true for me.
It's a nice connection. I mean, there's the team today to the team back then. There is a connection that can be made, and I'm glad that they're celebrating it. So.
Well, we're really looking forward to seeing the players wearing it. We really appreciate you joining us here today. I know you guys are looking forward to the game tomorrow. Enjoy the festivities and the moments leading up to honoring a century of hockey here in Vancouver.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with us. It's Craig H. Bowlesby, a local sports writer. You can check out his book. It's called Empire of Ice, The Rise and Fall of the Pacific Coast Hockey Association. He's been with us today, as has Jason Beck, the curator of the BC Sports Hall of Fame and Museum. We want to thank you for tuning in to our special presentation on the Canucks YouTube channel. And don't forget, the Canucks of today will be honoring the Canucks heroes of yesteryear. The Vancouver Millionaires jerseys will be worn Saturday at Rogers Arena when the Canucks entertain the Detroit Red Wings. It's a 7 o'clock start Vancouver time. On behalf of our entire crew here at Rogers Arena, this is Joey Kenward saying thanks for watching Canucks TV, a presentation honoring a century of hockey in Vancouver.